The Boston Celtics and Brad Stevens have a major decision to make as the final roster spot is still available. They could ultimately leave the roster spot open, or they could look for a reunion with O'Shea Brissett, or could look in a different direction, possibly looking at some potential free agents in either Jay Crowder or Shetty Osman. We'll be diving in discussing what the Boston Celtics ultimately could do and what I think will be the best decision for this team moving forward, looking for Banner 19. Welcome back to Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. You guys have been absolutely fantastic showing your support, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button. So if you want to make sure you stay up to date on daily Celtics content, this is the hub for you. Make sure to stay up to date and do all that stuff. But without further ado, let's dive into the topic at hand. Make sure to grab a snack. And like I mentioned in the introduction, we're going to be going over the possible solutions for the final roster spot for this Boston Celtics team. Now, ultimately, right, we mentioned the Celtics do have 14 guys under roster at this very moment. And with the new two-way spot being added with the new CBA, we could see the Celtics potentially leaving this roster spot open. We saw them do it for last season where they realistically at the end of the year on the last day they possibly could change Neemias Queta from a two-way spot to a standardized contract and then left the remaining two-way open for the remainder of the season. This helps a lot with the Celtics with flexibility, maybe possibly helping in and helping out with trades. And honestly, I think the Celtics could go in that direction. But the Celtics ultimately could look to fill that roster spot, have 15 guys under roster, and be ready to go with Porziņģis being injured. So we're going to be looking at 5 potential guys that I believe the Celtics could look at and could sign in this free agency. And then we will rank them 1 to 5 on what I think will be the most likely to happen. First, let's dive in and look at these 5 potential suitors, these 5 potential guys that could be that final roster spot for this team. First, we're going to be diving in and looking at O'Shea Brissett. Now, the Celtics could look to have a reunion with the player who was a solid bench piece, a guy who was competing for a spot for this Celtics team, but has really worked and grinded for his role for this Celtics and in the NBA. Coming from Syracuse, working hard in the G League, playing with Toronto and Indiana, he finally found himself on the Pacers last year and then transferred over to the Celtics this season, where he was fighting for a role in a championship squad. He averaged around 4 points and 3 rebounds on 44% shooting from the field and 27% from 3. But honestly, O'Shea Brissett showed us that he's a better defender and can be a solid switchable guy for any contending team. Now, Brissett can ultimately guard threes, fours, can play a small ball five, and brings a lot of energy on the offensive glass and will make sure that he is going to hustle and give it his last effort to make the right play. I love what I see out of Shea Brissett. He makes the smart moves, and I think he could be a nice addition for a team looking to take that step in finding a key role player off their bench. Next, we're going to be diving in and looking at another player in Gordon Hayward, who I know a lot of Celtics fans would love a reunion with. Now, Hayward is on the older side at 34 years old, has had some injuries that have slowed him down, and ultimately, when he got traded from Charlotte to Oklahoma City in the second half of the season, he didn't look that great. He averaged around 10 points and 4 rebounds on 46% shooting from the field and 41% shooting from 3-point range. But ultimately, I don't know if Hayward is the piece that the Celtics necessarily need. I do know that he is a fan favorite that a lot of people would love to welcome back, though. Looking at some other wings that I think the Celtics could address, I think Robert Covington is another one. Now, he is also on the older age of 33, getting up there a little bit, but Robert Covington, I think, can still be a valuable defender and could still hit the three at a decent clip, especially on a veteran minimum and playing in a decreased role. Now, his stats here show you that he shot around 34% from three and 44% from the field, only averaging 4 points, but that's on higher efficiency, on a higher clip. I believe if he is in a lessened role, his stats will look better, and I think he could be a solid contributor on a Celtics team. Lastly, the last two guys we're going to be, or next, the last two guys we're looking at are Shetty Osman, who the Celtics have shown interest in the past, either in veteran buyout or a trade or any sort of the reason. Shetty Osman is a solid 3-and-D wing who I still presents a solid amount of defense on that side. He was cut ultimately by the Spurs due to the fact that they brought in younger talent and wanted to develop that talent in said draft. Therefore, they had to make way with Shetty Osman, who was rumored to be traded and bought out for the last 2 years. Cedi Osman averages around 7 points on 3 rebounds, shooting around 48% from the field and 39% from three. Has one of the better efficiencies, and I still think would be a solid player to come in over on the veteran to get a little bit of a prove it deal for him in the NBA. And lastly is Jay Crowder. Now, Crowder has obviously already had a tenure with the Boston Celtics in the past, and I think he could still bring that great presence into Boston now. Now, Crowder has been rumored to go back to the Celtics as well in the past, and also brings that high motor, that relentless energy that I think the Celtics would love to have in their locker room once again with Jay Crowder. Ultimately, I don't think he presents that much playing time for the Boston Celtics, and I don't think he's going to be the most efficient player if they're looking for a guy for playing time in this 15 minutes. But I do ultimately think that Jrue Crowder could be a solid guy you have at the end of the bench that can fill in if a guy gets hurt, and can be a solid veteran guy who is a great locker room guy for a bunch of the youngins as well. So those are the 5 possible candidates that I am looking at. And let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. Do you guys like those 5 guys? Do you guys think that there are some better picks in free agency the Celtics could look for? Let me know what you guys are thinking down below in the comment section. But that's going to get us into the next part of the video, which is ranking these players. That's right. We're going to be going in and looking at them 1 through 5 and ranking them. Now, ultimately, the before we get into this ranking, I ultimately think the Celtics will hold this last roster spot open unless O'Shea Brissett decides to come back. I believe the Boston Celtics, at the beginning of free agency, gave all their old players that were entering free agency a veteran minimum contract and said, you want to come back, sign it immediately. You saw Luke Cornett and Neemias Queta sign basically immediately once free agency started, and that's due to that fact. Tillman came back a little bit after milling some offers in free agency, but ultimately he made the smart decision of taking the veteran minimum. And even though O'Shea Brissett has been looking at those offers, I think has been contemplating them, if a team does not give him more money or more playing time, I truly think he'll be back on the Boston Celtics in that last spot. But at this moment, he's not coming back if another team is going to be stealing him away from him as of right now, because he's still a free agent. He's not back on the roster. I would say they hold the roster spot open. But if they do look to fill it, here are my predictions. First, like I mentioned, we're going to say O'Shea Brissett. He's my #1 guy. Celtics want to bring everybody back. That is their main goal. They want to make sure that this championship team, this championship pedigree, is instilled into the team, into Boston, and that's what O'Shea Brissett brings. Switchability on the defensive side, nice energy and athleticism, bringing some nice offensive rebounding. Hustle player, love what I see when I hear O'Shea Brissett's name. Next is going to be Cedi Osman. Now, the Celtics, like I mentioned, have been interested in Cedi for the past couple of seasons. He's a player that they could have targeted on the trade deadline and around there. And I think Cedi brings a lot of potential for this Celtics team. I think he could be a solid defender and kind of come in, kind of fight for minutes as well. And depending on the night, could realistically get 8 to 10 minutes if a player like Sam Hauser or Peyton Pritchard isn't necessarily fantastic from 3-point range. And I do believe that Cedi Osman can still bring some defensive prowess as well. Next, we're going to look at Jay Crowder due to the fact of bringing home the ex-Boston Celtic, a guy who's going to bring a lot of energy, a lot of passion to the locker room. I could see Crowder fitting into that 3-4 position, kind of taking over that O'Shea Brissett role and kind of seemingly kind of fitting in there. O'Shea Brissett was around 10th, 11th man in the rotation, kind of got some run here and there if the team needed it or if the team had injuries. And that's what I see Jay Crowder kind of bringing to this team, but being more of a locker room guy, kind of instilling into the Jordan Walsh, into the Xavier Tillmans, though the Luke Cornett's into that hustle, that good defensive mentality. And that's something I'd love to see from a veteran like Jay Crowder, especially coming back to Boston. And then the last 2 guys, Robert Covington's going to be my 4th option. I still think he can provide some decent defense and some decent shooting if he is on a lower of playing minutes and efficient in getting shot opportunities. And then lastly, it's going to be Gordon Hayward. Even though a lot of fans would love to bring Gordon Hayward back, I do think that he took a little bit of a step back due to his injuries and with his older age. And I think Hauser and Shireman and Pritchard kind of bring that offensive role off the bench that Hayward would present for the Boston Celtics ultimately, and they're not as injury prone or as old as a guy in Hayward, regardless of how great the reunion would be. So ultimately, my list would go O'Shea Brissett number 1, Shetty Osman number 2, Jay Crowder number 3, Robert Covington number 4, and then my guy Gordon Hayward at number 5. Now I want you guys to let me know in the comment section, like I mentioned, what are your guys' thoughts? Who would you guys have at this 5? Let me know your rankings down below in the comment section. If you could replace anybody, let me know who you would replace and tell me with who. Like I said, it's not a guarantee that the Celtics fill this final roster spot. It is not necessary. It is not going to happen, but it is a possibility. And these are some players we can still discuss as the market for free agency has thinned out over the last couple of weeks. And we basically know that it's either some teams are going to be offering MLEs to some of them if they're off applicable. If not, it's just going to be veteran minimum contracts for the rest of everybody due to the new rules with the CBA. But like I mentioned, let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you guys are feeling about this Celtics team down below in the comment section. If you want to stay up to date on everything revolving around this team throughout the entire offseason, we have daily uploads here on Celtics Digest. We're going to have the live stream starting back up again next week. We'll have an update for you guys on the community page. If you want to make sure you stay up to date on every other social, if you're still at this point of the video, join the Discord. Check out the link down below. Follow us on Twitter to stay up to date and get more updates on the Celtics and more news about what I think around the league. Once again, you guys have been absolutely killing showing your support, so I really do appreciate every single one of you who tunes in, who clicks on these videos, who does leave a thought. So thank you guys so much. I'm Bruce Velez. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your night, and go Boston Celtics, baby.